Obamacare celebrating 5 years on Monday since being signed into law, and there are claims of massive waste already. The administration says more than 14 million are now covered under the new plan, but Republicans on a Senate Finance Committee say at least $5.7 billion in spending has been wasted since the inception of that law. Avik Roy is a senior fellow with Manhattan Institute. Has gone through the numbers here. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you, Bill.
Blowing out the candles, obviously, right? Quite clearly. $5.7 billion is no small amount.
No, and it's going to get bigger.
What in the world has happened here?
Well, there were all those states that set up exchanges, the websites that got botched. They spent hundreds of millions of dollars setting up websites. You wouldn't think it's so expensive to set up a website, but when the government does it, it seems to cost hundreds of millions of dollars per state. And so that's a big part of the several billion dollars you see there.
Well, let me just stop you there. You're saying healthcare.gov has already surpassed $2 billion
no,
in spending for its website and repairs?
Not just healthcare.gov, but the individual states that's tried to set up their own websites and not rely on the federal website. So if you add it all up, yeah, it's several billion dollars.
That's staggering.
Yeah.
What's Amazon pay?
You know, I don't know, but I would bet they could do it for about 1/100 of the cost.
My gosh. The analysis says $1.3 billion spent on some of these defunct state exchanges.
Yeah.
Who was accounting for this, and who expected this to go this way?
Well, obviously, a lot of these states thought that they were going to do just great having all these systems in place, but the problem is the government's procedures for setting up these things and contracting them, the procurement protocols. There's only a couple of companies that even qualify for government contracts, and those companies aren't always competent. They fail, and they fail upward. That's what creates a lot of these problems.
But you were about to say that this is a bottom line number.
Yeah, because the thing is,
suggesting it's going to go higher.
Oh, yeah, because if you think about it, the law is spending on the uninsured $2 trillion over the next 10 years. So $5 billion is a rounding error. What you're going to now see is a lot of people who qualified for some of these subsidies when they weren't supposed to because their income wasn't in the right bracket. And now the tax code is going to have, the IRS is going to have to reclaim that money. They're going to give up on a lot of that. So there's going to be probably several tens of billions of dollars, I'd say.
But some of these people, they kind of lied about their income, right?
Well, maybe
to get greater subsidies. Wasn't that the case or not?
Possibly, but you know that's going to be part of it. Part of it's also going to be people who made mistakes, right? Because people's income goes up and down. So if your income was this one month and it was lower the next month and a different number the third month, your subsidies are going to change. And the computer systems that the government has set up don't always account for that.
Well, what does all that mean in the big picture? A year from now, 5 years from now?
It's just a big government program where there is going to be a certain amount of waste, fraud, and abuse. If you look at Medicare and Medicaid, it's estimated that 10% of the about $1.5 trillion we spend on those programs is waste and fraud. That's
so we just
$150 billion a year.
We have to accept this?
No, we don't have to accept it, but if you want to reform it, you actually have to get those programs outside of the government bureaucracy and have, I would argue, private insurers administering those programs. Because private insurers, if you look at credit card companies, private financial institutions, the rate of fraud is much, much lower because they have an economic incentive to get rid of it. The government doesn't.
To reverse the law takes a lot.
Yes.
And the longer it goes, the more it's in the bloodstream. And the Supreme Court's going to have a big decision probably at the end of June.
Right.
What are Republicans doing, if anything, on behalf of some moderate Democrats to come up with a plan or an alternative?
Yeah, so this is one of the big challenges. Obviously, with the Supreme Court, there's a contingency plan that Congress has to come up with. But the broader issue of how Republicans approach health care policy and Obamacare and replacing Obamacare, it's going to be hard. Because to repeal and replace...
Impossible?
I wouldn't say it's impossible, but it's pretty difficult because to repeal and replace Obamacare, to do both of those things, it's going to require 60 votes in the Senate. Republicans don't have 60 votes. They have 54. And so how are they going to attract those centrist Democrats to go along with what they do? They're going to have to come up with something pretty interesting.
Well, depending on what the Supremes do, I mean, their hand may be forced. The administration, at a hearing just yesterday, they would argue that the plan has proven to be relatively affordable, it was the phrase that was used, and the exchanges have been stable and competitive. Are they right?
Yeah, so we did a study at the Manhattan Institute of this, and we found that the underlying cost of health insurance that you buy on healthcare.gov or these state exchanges is 49% higher in the average county compared to the kind of insurance you could buy before. Now, it's affordable for some people because they qualify for those subsidies that reduce the cost to them. But to the taxpayer, the cost is a lot higher.
So there is some truth in this, then?
Well, it depends.
And what they're claiming.
For the people who qualify for those subsidies, they're going to be able to afford insurance because other people are paying extra to subsidize that. But for the person who doesn't qualify for those subsidies, who doesn't qualify for enough of them, health care is more expensive.
What do you think happens next?
Yeah.
I mean, well, you come back in a year, what are we talking about then?
I think what we're going to be talking about is that Medicaid, which is the more government-centered part of Obamacare, is going to expand a lot. But the private coverage that's supposed to be the heart of what Obamacare does to reform the system, that's going to plateau. We're already seeing that the net number of people who are buying private coverage on the websites is slowing down, and it'll be interesting to see if that continues to slow down in 2016.
Great to get your perspective. Thank you. Avik
you.
Roy with us from the Manhattan Institute. Nice to have you.
Same to you.